Who are you?
Well, I'm waiting for my wife. She's in 4C, cardiac wing. She's fighting it. Shot, huh?
Ditto. That single word from Ghost became shorthand for I love you across the entire 1990s. But the supernatural romance that made Pottery Wheels iconic almost never got made. The movie where a comedy director famous for rubber chickens made America sob, where Patrick Swayze couldn't breathe on freezing sets while crew wore parkas, and where the scariest sounds in cinema were actually crying babies played backwards. Welcome to Ghost, the film that beat Home Alone and Pretty Woman to become 1990's highest-grossing movie worldwide, where Bruce Willis turned down playing a ghost, then played one 9 years later in The Sixth Sense, where Jerry Zucker went from directing Leslie Nielsen fighting hot dogs to making the whole planet ugly cry, and where the screenwriter's exact words about casting Oda Mae Brown were,
"You can use me.
Use you.
You can use my body.
Use your body.
Just do it quick before I change my mind."
anyone but Whoopi, right before Whoopi won an Oscar. Today we're counting down 15 weird facts about a movie where the pottery scene collapse was completely scripted, but Hollywood lied and said it was an accident, where waitresses refused to serve Tony Goldwyn for years because his betrayal felt too real, and where seeing a plaster dummy on set triggered Patrick Swayze's unprocessed grief about his father's funeral and made his performance devastatingly authentic. Before we step into the light, smash that like button and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes chaos about the movies that rewired our emotions. Let's start with number 15. Number 15, the spoof king who made America, Ugly Cry, directed his first drama. Before Ghost, Jerry Zucker's biggest dramatic moment was Leslie Nielsen fighting a runaway hot dog in The Naked Gun. Not exactly Oscar material, Zucker was one-third of the legendary Zaz trio, the maniacs behind Airplane, and Top Secret. These guys put Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in a cockpit and had Nielsen disarming bombs while deadpanning one-liners. Their entire career was built on mocking sincerity. Every emotional beat existed to be undercut with a sight gag or absurd punchline. So, when Zucker signed on to direct a romantic supernatural thriller about love...
What?
Yep. I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it a lot.
Loss and the afterlife, Hollywood collectively spit out its coffee. Paramount executives were quietly terrified. The script was a tonal tightrope, part thriller, part love story, part meditation on death. And their new director's instinct was to look for the joke. Even Zucker doubted himself. He was suspicious of Patrick Swayze at first. Too handsome, too leading man, too obvious. A cliché, not a character. But then Zucker had an epiphany that changed everything. Comedy and drama run on the same clock. The pause before a laugh is the same pause before a tear. The timing that made Airplane. Land was the exact same timing that could make audiences sob into their popcorn. So he played it completely straight. No winks, no irony. Just raw emotion calibrated with the same precision he once used for slapstick. The result? A movie so sincere it made the whole planet cry. Directed by a guy famous for rubber chickens and fart jokes. Number 14. Bruce Willis passed on playing dead, then did it anyway, 9 years later. In 1990, Hollywood had a romantic fantasy. Bruce Willis and Demi Moore married in real life, starring together in a supernatural love story. Studios were practically drooling, but Bruce wanted out before the table read. His problem? The character was dead. Willis was reportedly hesitant about the whole concept. How does a movie work when your lead spends most of the runtime as a ghost? And in 1990, Bruce Willis was laser-focused on building the John McClane brand. A wisecracking tough guy, not a weepy spirit boyfriend. That rejection cleared the runway for Patrick Swayze, who brought something Willis never would have: vulnerability without weakness. Where Bruce would have gone cynical, Swayze went tender. His chemistry with Demi Moore became the entire heartbeat of the film. But here's where it gets delicious. 9 years later, Bruce Willis starred in The Sixth Sense, playing a guy who, spoiler alert, was dead the whole time. The movie made over $670 million worldwide and became a cultural phenomenon.
Me, Sam, hold on. Sam. Oh, Sam.
Turns out audiences were perfectly happy following a ghost if the story was delivered. Willis later called himself a knucklehead for turning down Ghost, admitting he didn't see what the film could be, which is Hollywood speak for, "I left $100 million on the table and my wife kept the receipt." Number 13, Crocodile Dundee, almost haunted Demi Moore at that pottery wheel. Picture the pottery scene, Demi Moore at the wheel, Unchained melody swelling, and behind her, Paul Hogan cracking wise about the afterlife while clay splatters everywhere. That almost happened. When Ghost was making the rounds in Hollywood, studios weren't quite sure what to do with it. The script blended romance, thriller, and supernatural drama in ways that made executives nervous. Some imagined a more comedic take. And naturally, their first instinct was to cast the guy who fought crocodiles with a knife and charmed his way through New York. Paul Hogan was riding a massive wave in the late 80s after Crocodile Dundee. He was charming, rugged, always winking at the camera. Studio logic said, play up the laughs, tone down the tears, and who better to deliver supernatural charm than the bloke who once told muggers, "That's not a knife."
Oh no. I hope it wasn't a masterpiece.
Well, it's not now.
Now really sit with that for a second. Instead of Swayze's aching vulnerability, you'd get Ozzy's swagger. Instead of quiet heartbreak, you're waiting for the punchline. Sam Wheat wouldn't be tragically reaching for his lost love. He'd be making ghost jokes and probably calling Whoopi mate. The pottery scene would have been comedy, not romance. The final goodbye would have had a wink. The entire emotional core of Ghost would have collapsed into a supernatural buddy comedy. Thankfully, Hogan said no. He felt the role's emotional depth didn't match his comedic persona, so he stuck with lighter adventures and left the weeping to someone else. Number 12, Demi Moore's restraint was the secret weapon nobody saw coming. In the late 80s, movie grief had one setting: maximum volume, shaking, sobbing, mascara running down faces like a Tim Burton nightmare. If you weren't ugly crying, were you even sad? Demi Moore walked into Ghost and threw that entire playbook in the trash. Director Jerry Zucker was navigating tricky territory, balancing supernatural thrills, romantic drama, and Whoopi Goldberg's comedy. He needed an emotional anchor, someone who could sell devastating grief without tipping the movie into melodrama. Moore delivered something critics and co-stars would praise for decades: restraint. She didn't wail, she didn't collapse. She played Molly's heartbreak with a stillness that felt almost uncomfortable, like eavesdropping on someone's worst moment. Watch the scene where Sam dies in her arms. Moore doesn't go big. Her voice stays quiet. Her body goes rigid instead of theatrical.
Somebody! Somebody! Somebody help us!
The devastation lives entirely in her eyes. That subtlety allowed Zucker to hold the camera on her longer than usual. No cutaways, no distractions, just quiet devastation filling the frame. If Demi had gone big, the whole balancing act would have collapsed. Ghost needed someone who could anchor the supernatural chaos with something that felt painfully real. The final shot proves it. As Sam fades into the light, the camera stays locked on Molly's face. No theatrics, no soundtrack swells to tell you what to feel. Just a woman watching the love of her life disappear forever. That restraint, that refusal to perform grief, is why Ghost still works 35 years later when other 90s dramas feel overcooked. Number 11. Those shadow demons were literally screaming babies, played backwards. The shadow demons in Ghost have barely any screen time, but that sound moved into your brain rent-free and never left. Sound designer Walter Murch had a twisted problem to solve. He didn't want a generic monster roar. He wanted the audio equivalent of damnation, something that would skip your brain entirely and punch your nervous system in the throat. His solution? Crying babies. Murch took recordings of infants crying and made them wrong. He slowed them way down, dropped the pitch until those high-pitched wails became deep, guttural moans. Then he played them backwards. Here's why that works. Humans instinctively react to the sound of a baby crying. It's hardwired into our DNA. We're programmed to respond immediately. But when that sound is reversed and distorted, it becomes deeply disorienting. You can't identify it. You can't rationalize it. All you feel is dread, and you don't know why. Your brain recognizes something familiar, twisted into something predatory. It's the audio equivalent of seeing a face where the features are slightly wrong. You could cover your eyes when the shadows burst through the walls to drag Carl to hell. But it didn't matter. The sound still got you. You didn't need to see hell. You could hear it coming. By turning something innocent, a baby's cry, into something monstrous, Murch created one of the most unsettling audio moments in 90s cinema. Critics and fans have noted how the sound design contributes to Ghost's enduring creepiness long after the visuals fade. Number 10. Patrick Swayze wasn't allowed to breathe, literally. Being a ghost looks romantic on screen. Behind the scenes, it meant standing in a meat locker trying not to shiver while a director obsessed over your respiratory system. Jerry Zucker insisted that ghosts appear completely ethereal. No foggy exhales, no warmth, no biological signs of life. If audiences ever saw Patrick Swayze's breath, the whole illusion would shatter. Small problem. They were filming in New York during winter with human actors who insisted on having functioning lungs. So the crew declared war on physics. They cranked the AC until the sets felt like industrial freezers. Crew members waddled around in parkas and gloves. Meanwhile, Swayze stood there in a thin shirt, trying to look ethereal.
What are you talking about?
I know the man who killed me.
He knows the man who killed him.
His name is Willie Lopez, and I know where he lives.
Instead of hypothermic. And even with all of that, some breath still snuck through. In 1990, you couldn't just click remove breath in post-production. Every visible puff of air had to be painstakingly erased frame by frame. The process was tedious, expensive, and time-consuming. But Zucker knew his audience. One visible breath in the subway scene, and suddenly Sam Wheat isn't a tragic ghost. He's just a cold guy standing weird. So they froze the sets, tortured the crew, and spent thousands of dollars digitally removing evidence that Patrick Swayze had lungs. The subway scenes were especially brutal. Long takes with Swayze walking through crowds meant extended periods of controlled breathing in freezing temperatures while trying to look calm and supernatural. Number 9, that penny scene hit harder than $1 billion CGI spectacle. These days, if a superhero needs to move an object with their mind, some guy in a cubicle clicks a mouse and the computer handles it. The object floats perfectly, the physics are flawless, and you don't feel a thing. In 1990, they had to get creative. When Sam needs to prove to Molly that he's really there...
Give me a penny, quick.
What?
Push a penny under the door now.
You be talking about push a penny under the door.
That he's not just grief playing tricks on her mind. He makes a penny float up the door. That wasn't some slick digital effect. Ghost was made before modern CGI took over Hollywood. Most effects were done in camera or with optical compositing, which meant everything had to feel grounded, physical, and real. And that's exactly why it works. On screen, the penny rises slowly, trembling, struggling. It's not a magic trick, it's effort. You can feel the resistance. In the world of Ghost, moving a small piece of copper isn't a party trick. It's a Herculean act of will. You feel Sam pushing against the laws of physics just to reach the woman he loves. And because it's a real penny on a real door in a real New York apartment, your brain doesn't question it. The limitations of 1990 technology force the filmmakers to make it feel earned. Molly believes it, and so do you. That's what Gen X remembers most. One of the most emotionally devastating scenes of our childhood wasn't rendered on a server farm. It was simple, small, and earned, powered by the radical idea that love could still move something, even from the other side. Number 8, the scariest thing in Ghost, was a very tired man on public transit. The shadow demons got all the nightmares. But, let's be honest, Vincent Schiavelli lurking in a subway station is the image that actually followed you home. That face, gaunt, hollow-eyed, looking like he hadn't slept since the Eisenhower administration.
Show me how you do that. I want to learn, and I'm not leaving until you teach me. Get off! No. Get off!
Schiavelli's subway ghost didn't play evil. He played tragic, a spirit so worn down by his own existence that hostility was all he had left. When Sam first encounters him, the ghost is territorial and aggressive. Get off my train. But then something shifts. This hostile stranger becomes an unlikely teacher, showing Sam how to interact with the physical world, how to push, how to focus, how to make the living feel him. Without that encounter, Sam has no way to protect Molly, no way to fight back. The subway ghost doesn't just scare us, He unlocks the entire third act of the film. But here's the gut punch hiding in plain sight. This ghost isn't a villain. He's a warning, a spirit who never moved on, stuck replaying the same anger in the same tunnels forever. He shows Sam, and us, what happens when you can't let go. The subway ghost is what Sam could become if he stays. Angry, bitter, territorial, over a piece of the world that doesn't belong to him anymore. For many fans, that subway encounter remains one of the eeriest scenes in Ghost. Not because of special effects or jump scares, but because Schiavelli made being dead look exhausting. Number 7, the pottery scene. Wasn't an accident, Hollywood lied to you. Every Gen Xer knows the pottery scene. Unchained melody playing, Swayze's hands over Moore's, clay spinning, hearts melting, and that moment where the pot collapses and everything gets messy and real. That wasn't an accident, Hollywood lied to you. For decades, the story has circulated that the clay collapsed unexpectedly. Swayze and Moore improvised, and Zucker kept the cameras rolling. Movie magic happened by accident. It's a perfect Hollywood legend.
Masterpiece.
Well, it's not now.
Can I help?
Yeah.
It's also not true. The collapse was planned, scripted, and rehearsed. Zucker and the filmmakers wanted the moment where perfection fails, where the shape buckles and the scene pivots from control to connection. They shot multiple takes, not one miraculous uninterrupted accident. But here's what is true. Demi Moore actually learned pottery. She trained for weeks before filming, so the camera could stay close, really close, without breaking the spell. Centering clay on a spinning wheel is brutally difficult. Get it wrong, and the whole thing wobbles off into oblivion. Moore practiced until her hands looked like they belonged there. That meant no obvious hand doubles, no constant cutaways. The lens could glide from her face to her hands and back in one smooth motion, selling the intimacy completely. And the accident? It was designed to do exactly what it did, force the characters to stop performing and start reacting. The laughter, the mess, the playfulness, none of it was chaos. It was carefully orchestrated chaos, which honestly makes it more impressive, not less. Number 6, Tony Goldwyn played the villain so well, waitresses refused to serve him. Carl Brunner wasn't your standard movie bad guy. There was no mask, no cackling, no over-the-top villainy. He was something far worse. Your best friend, your business partner. That kind of betrayal doesn't wash off. And apparently, neither did Tony Goldwyn's face. After Ghost became a phenomenon, Goldwyn discovered something unsettling. In interviews over the years, he's described how strangers treated him like Carl Brunner hadn't stayed on screen. Restaurant servers would glare, service would slow. And in one story he's told repeatedly, a waitress flat out refused to take his order because of what his character did to Patrick Swayze. Here's why it hit so hard. Carl was the leftover nightmare of the greed is good decade, the clean-cut corporate climber who smiled while stabbing you in the back. He wasn't loud or flashy. He was sweaty, desperate, and fake sincere.
I understand the need to hang on to him. I really do. But this is absurd.
I know this seems absurd.
The kind of guy who hugs you at the funeral while laundering money through your accounts. And because Goldwyn looks safe and approachable, like every mid-level executive you've ever worked with, the betrayal felt personal. Watch the scene where Carl tries to comfort Molly after Sam's death. The performance is masterful. He's genuinely nervous, genuinely guilty, but selling concern. You can see him working to keep his mask in place. Goldwyn eventually broke the curse, most famously as the romantic, complicated President Fitz on Scandal. But for a whole generation, he'll always be the guy who betrayed Sam Wheat. And if strangers were still giving him the cold shoulder years later, that's not a complaint. That's the highest compliment an actor can get. Number 5, Ditto. Had no business being that romantic. Quick, name the most romantic line in cinema history. You complete me? As you wish. How about Ditto?
I say it all the time. I feel
No,
like
you don't. You say ditto, and that's not the same.
Somehow, Ghost turned a throwaway word into an emotional wrecking ball, and the guy who wrote it wasn't convinced at first. Screenwriter Bruce Joel Rubin has talked about how hard it is in Hollywood not to go big in the final act. When your soulmate is about to cross into the great beyond, the instinct is to write a speech, something sweeping, quotable, something that sells greeting cards. Ditto felt like a cop-out. Too small, too casual, like the movie was shrugging at its own love story. But then the team figured out what made it actually perfect. Sam Wheat wasn't a feelings guy. He was buttoned up, emotionally armored in that very specific late 80s way. The man worked in finance. Saying "I love you" out loud probably made him uncomfortable. So ditto wasn't laziness. It was him, his shorthand, his way of saying everything without actually having to say anything. And that tiny word became the whole movie's secret weapon. By establishing ditto as Sam's signature early on, the film planted a verbal fingerprint. Later, when Molly hears that word coming through Oda Mae's mouth, she doesn't need DNA evidence. She knows. No one else on Earth would say it that way. Then comes the knockout punch. At the very end, Sam finally says the full words, "I love you," and Molly, broken, grieving, but finally at peace, answers with, "Ditto." The roles reverse. She's learned his language.
Ditto.
She understands him completely, and she's ready to let him go. Number 4. Patrick Swayze fought for Whoopi Goldberg and changed the movie forever. Patrick Swayze was supposed to be the pretty face, show up, look soulful, haunt romantically. Nobody asked him to have opinions about casting, but he had opinions anyway. When it came to Oda Mae Brown, the studio hesitated. Whoopi Goldberg wasn't the safe, obvious choice for a big supernatural romance. In 1990, she was a respected stand-up and stage star. But Hollywood didn't quite know what to do with her in blockbuster movies. She wasn't on the studio's radar. Patrick Swayze disagreed loudly. Multiple people involved with the film have said Swayze personally pushed for Goldberg, believing she was the only one who could make Oda Mae feel real instead of cartoonish. He'd seen her work. He'd loved her grounded cynicism, the kind of dry, skeptical energy that could sell a scam artist turned real psychic without tipping into parody. And this is Patrick Swayze, who had just come off Dirty Dancing. When he spoke, people listened. According to Goldberg herself, Swayze told the studio he wouldn't commit to the film until they gave her a fair shot. He essentially threatened to walk unless they auditioned her. Eventually, the studio relented. They flew Whoopi to Mississippi, where she was shooting another film. Swayze and Zucker read scenes with her on location. The chemistry was instant. "Man, you could just see it," Zucker said later. "I could see it in front of me and go, yeah, that works." Goldberg got the role. She won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. In her acceptance speech, she thanked Swayze for fighting for her. That line, "Molly, you in danger, girl,"
Molly, you in danger, girl,
exists because Patrick Swayze knew what this movie needed before the executives did. Number 3. Whoopi Goldberg's Oscar win was 50 years in the making. When Whoopi Goldberg's name was called at the 1991 Oscars, people didn't just clap, they exhaled. Like a moment the industry hadn't seen since 1939. And that's not an exaggeration, that's math. The last black woman to win an acting Oscar was Hattie McDaniel for Gone with the Wind in 1940, and then nothing. 51 years of silence, half a century of almost, and not quite, and maybe next time. So, when Whoopi took that stage for Ghost, it wasn't a moment, it was a finally. And here's what makes it even more remarkable. She did it playing a character who could have been completely disposable. When simply reading the script, Oda Mae Brown reads like comic relief. The wacky sidekick. The person who cracks jokes while the pretty leads do the heavy emotional lifting. In lesser hands, she's a one-note punchline who exits stage left and gets forgotten.
I pressed the bell, she's not there, I'm going goodbye.
Just wait one minute.
I'm sorry.
99 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 bottles of beer. Take one down.
All right,
pass it
don't
around,
sing,
99
all
bottles
right,
of beer.
all right.
Whoopi turned her into the movie's oxygen supply. Ghost is heavy. Murder, grief, betrayal, literal shadow demons dragging screaming souls to hell. Without Oda Mae's timing, audiences would have drowned in it. She gave us permission to breathe, to laugh just enough that when the gut punches came, they landed like freight trains. But the real magic, she knew when to stop being funny. That scene when Sam temporarily inhabits Oda Mae's body to dance with Molly one last time. Whoopi doesn't play it for laughs. Watch her eyes. Her posture changes. Her whole energy softens. She lets Sam's longing live behind her face. In that moment, Oda Mae stops being comic relief and becomes the emotional pivot of the entire film. That's a masterclass. Oda Mae wasn't the love story, but she's the reason the love story worked. Number 2. A 35-year-old song became 1990's hottest track thanks to Wet Clay. Before Ghost, Unchained Melody was a beloved classic familiar to earlier generations, living on oldies stations and slow dances at weddings. It was safe, comfortable, and not exactly dominating the charts. Then Ghost gave it new life in a way few tracks ever do. The genius wasn't just picking the right song, it was the sync, the perfect marriage of sound and image. That low, haunting bass line starts just as the pottery wheel begins to turn. The guitar hums like clay breathing under Demi Moore's hands. As the pot rises, so does the music. And when Bobby Hatfield hits that impossible note, "I need your love," the movie doesn't show you romance. It wires it directly into your nervous system. The reaction was immediate. After Ghost came out, the Righteous Brothers' 1965 recording climbed back into the Billboard Hot 100, reaching number 13. Meanwhile, a newly recorded 1990 version also hit the top 20 at number 19. That made them the first act ever to have two versions of the same song in the Billboard Hot 100 Top 20 simultaneously. The same song, same artists, 35 years apart, both hits at once. Overnight, it became the ultimate Gen X karaoke trap. Everyone thought they could hit those notes. Almost no one could. Thousands of bar patrons suffered. It was a terrible time. Unchained Melody has over 1,500 recorded versions by more than 670 artists worldwide. But if you lived through 1990, only one matters, the one that makes you think you should probably own a pottery wheel. Number 1, Patrick Swayze, won the role by Falling Apart, and never stopped. The most important audition almost never happened because Jerry Zucker wasn't sold on Patrick Swayze. He was fresh off Roadhouse and Dirty Dancing. Swayze had a reputation. He was an action star, a heartthrob, the guy who could throw a punch and look good doing it.
926-31043.
926-31043. Is that right?
Yeah.
Good.
Zucker was making a supernatural love story. He wanted soft, soulful, someone who could carry vulnerability, not just choreography. When Swayze's name came up, Zucker was skeptical. In fact, screenwriter Bruce Joel Rubin has said that Zucker went to see Roadhouse specifically to evaluate Swayze, and walked out of the theater saying, "Over my dead body." But Swayze was drawn to the story's heart, the love and loss at its center. He asked to read for the part. When Zucker finally let him, Swayze chose the most emotionally powerful scenes in the script. He showed up in a suit and tie, carrying a briefcase, looking nothing like an action hero. He read the final scene where Sam says goodbye to Molly. The room reacted. People were moved. We all had tears in our eyes, right there in the office, and we knew how it ends, Zucker later told People magazine. By the time Swayze finished, Zucker knew he'd been wrong. Swayze got the role, but the emotional weight didn't stop at the audition. Behind the scenes, filming Ghost stirred up feelings Swayze hadn't expected. In interviews, he later said that seeing a plaster dummy used to represent his on-screen body took him back to the shock of his father's funeral in 1982. The grief he thought he'd processed came rushing back, and that unresolved pain bled into his performance. That's why Sam Wheat doesn't feel like a movie ghost. He feels heavy, like a soul struggling to let go. The longing in Swayze's eyes during those final scenes wasn't manufactured for the camera. It came from somewhere real. When Sam says goodbye to Molly, "The love inside, you take it with you." There's a weight to that line that transcends the script. Swayze wasn't just playing a character learning to move on. He was working through something himself. And there you have it. 15 weird facts about Ghost. Which facts surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know what hit you hardest. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Ghost, smash that like button and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes revelations about the movies that rewired our emotions in the 1990s. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.